Welcome to this week's webinar. My name is Hannah. I'm a software specialist here at Strucsoft Solutions, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to create notched members and squash blocks in MWF. I'm going to be talking about some floor framing features for today. And like Rashab mentioned, I will be using a new build for today. I'm using Revit 2023 on my end. I will be using ProSuite, but I will be only focusing on LGS for this demonstration, but you can use this tool for wood as well. So like Rashab mentioned, we are using the new build for today. It's build 8432. This hasn't been published yet. It's coming soon, and I will be giving you a sneak peek on this build. There will be a minor difference between this build and another build with regards to this tool. I will talk about that when it's time to talk about it. Okay, so let's go over the webinar bullet points. Again, we're going to be creating notch members and squash blocks for floors in MWF. First, we have to talk about creating marker lines because these tools will require marker lines. And then we're going to talk about the tool to create squash blocks. We will create some settings and then apply them to the marker lines. We will also talk about the notch member tool. Again, we're going to create some settings and apply them to marker lines as well. We also have to create a whole series for the notch member tool. We will go over that in just a bit. Before we start, I just want to point out that this is our email. Should you have any questions at any point about any issue, please feel free to reach us here. Somebody from our team will be very happy to assist you. That's it. Let's jump in. Okay, so I'm going to be keeping it very simple for today, guys. This is not going to be a very long presentation. It's probably going to be somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. And you'll notice here that I kept it very simple. It's something that's very easy to recreate on your end, and this presentation is not going to take too much of your time. Okay, so let's talk about what we have to create for today. So here, we have two samples in this project. The first sample here is floor panel 1, and you'll notice that I've added these squash blocks here. So let's analyze what's going on. So this floor panel is using this family. So this is the out-of-the-box family. It's a 10-inch family, and really it's the default. I didn't add any other families, and that's all the families I will need for this sample. You'll notice that I added this squash block. It's the same family, and I've added it in a particular orientation or with specific settings. I'm just using Control to select these, and I'm going to click on HI on my keyboard. Let's take a closer look at what's going on here. So I've added these members here. If I take a look at the right side, you'll notice that I wanted to place these members right here at the top, and I kept a little gap for the return right here. So we're going to talk about how to recreate these settings using the tools, the squash block tools. That's really it for the first example. The second example, we're going to talk about notched members. You'll notice here, it's the same families. Like I mentioned, it's the only family I'm going to use for today. I've placed this family elsewhere. I've placed it right here. I'm just using Tab to catch it, and there it is. So I've placed this member right here. It's going all over our panel from the start to the end. It's the same family. And let's actually take a closer look at what's happening. Here you'll notice that I also have a void. So I've added a whole series with a rectangular void here. And I'm going to make a selection just to show these, and Tab and this, HI on my keyboard. Sorry, I didn't select this one, but actually this is a good opportunity to show that there's an opening right here. And let's take a look at this from the bottom. So this is what we're trying to achieve for today. If I delete this, look, it's gonna delete the opening. Just gonna bring it back. And that's it. Really simple. So let's start recreating these two samples. I will start over here. Just gonna select this floor, hit BX on my keyboard, and let's just fix the scope box so we can see better. let's create a panel. So I'm using MWF Pro Suite. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the floor module. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a floor panel. So I just hit create and I'm just going to wait for it to load. Okay, I'm going to be using just the simplest template we have, which is the light gauge. I will click on frame it now so that it skips a step and I don't have to regenerate. And I'm just going to click on create. And that's it. I've created floor panel 3 just with our out-of-the-box template. And I'm not going to be making any changes to this template, but you can if you like on your end. But I'm going to just keep it simple. Okay, let's start with talking about the tools we're going to use for today. The first tool we're going to use is going to be found here under marker. And here I want to point out that this is the difference between this build and previous builds, is that in this build, you're going to find the marker tools here: create marker lines, associate marker lines, regenerate marker lines. These 3 have been moved to this menu from this menu where they previously existed in previous builds. That's okay. It's all going to work the same way. I actually want to share something here on my end. I'm just going to share a screenshot. So this is a screenshot that I've taken from another build. And here you'll notice that I'm using Pro Wood, which is a good opportunity to mention again that these tools that we're featuring today can be used for wood as well. And here I just want to point out that previously these tools existed here within the tools option. Now they are relocated in markers. And that's it. I'll move this out of the way. To start, we're gonna start with creating marker lines. Here I want to add something before we do that, because you can really start anywhere. The tools we're going to use are marker lines, and then we're going to need to create project bridging types. Also, later on, I'm going to need to add a whole series, so I will be creating it from here. So these are the 3 tools that we're going to be using. To be honest, you can start at any point. You can start by creating a whole series first or a project bridging type first. It doesn't matter. I've decided that for today, I would like to use marker lines first. So to do this, I'm going to select one member from this panel, and I'm going to go to markers. I'm going to create marker lines. I'm going to get this dialog box, and I can create marker lines at wall support, at beam support, at panel start, at panel end, or I can create regular spacing where I would specify the spacing and maybe a different first offset. If I'm using benchmarks, I can select it from here. But for today, I will not be using this option. I will be using this option right here, which will just create equal spacing with max distance. I would specify the distance I want. I'm just going to use the default. It's 5 feet on my end, and that's it. Here, you can assign a joist stiffener, but we will not be covering this for today. You can also add lifting toggles. This is also not part of our scope for today. So here, this is important. You can assign a bridging type if you have one already. You'll notice I do have them already, but I'm going to pretend that I don't. So I'm going to actually select nothing. So I'm not going to assign anything right now. As for the whole series, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to talk to you about this a little bit later. That's it. I'm going to click on OK. And you'll notice that we got these 2 lines here. So if I select this line, it's a regular Revit line. But it's not just a regular Revit line, it's actually a Revit line that is populated with MWF information. Now, I'm going to create the settings for the tools that we would need. I'm going to go to Tools and then Project Bridging Types. Again, you'll notice that I have some bridging types pre-created, but on your end, when you open this for the first time, there's not going to be anything here. You do have to go here and click on Create New. You would have to give this blocking type or bridging blocking type a name. I'm going to call it SB02. And for today, we're not going to cover this type here, the continuous. We're also not going to cover blocking. We will be covering notched member and squash blocks. However, I would like to encourage you to take a look at a previous webinar by one of our team members where they covered continuous and blocking. For today, we're just going to focus on these two. I've selected the one I want, and I'm going to just click on OK. You'll notice that the menu is going to populate according to what you have selected. So here for notch members, it looks different than it does for squash blocks. So it's going to look different for any one of the options you have chosen. You can create new, you can rename, or you can delete. If we go over here where it says type, where it says side, you can choose either open, hard, or left or right. You can place it on the left or right. I'm just going to keep the default for now. This one here, the swap, this is in the case that you make a change or you specify something. And then if you click on swap, it's just going to flip them around. That's all. I'm just going to keep the settings for now to get back to what it was. Here, you'll notice where it says open side, you need to enable to be able to access these commands here. If this is not ticked, they're going to be grayed out and you can't access them. It's going to be the same thing for the hard side. You have to tick this to enable it. You can also click on same if you want to use the same settings for both sides. Let's talk about what's going on here. Here is where you would select the family and the type. Again, I only have this one for this project. That's the one I'm going to use. So position, the default is centered. You can offset it from top or bottom. We'll come back to this later. I'm going to keep the settings as they are for now. Here you would add an offset from the center. I'm going to keep it as is. This is of the family that you're adding. As for the orientation, it could either be web or flange. And if you see here, you'll notice a little illustration that shows you what we mean by that. Look, it's just going to show you how it's going to be positioned. As for the rotation, it's either 0 or 180. And it also shows you a little illustration here. Right now, I'm going to keep this enabled. And it's pretty much the same features here. So I'm not going to go over them again. However, I do have to mention what's going on here. You'll notice we have everything ticked by default, but you can untick something that you don't want the squash block to be attached to. In this case, I'm going to keep all of them selected for now. I didn't make any changes to the default settings because I just want to show you how it's going to look, and then we're going to come back and make some changes in a little bit. I clicked on OK. You'll notice that nothing happened. And this is because we haven't applied the tools to the marker lines yet. So to do this, I have to select the marker lines, and I'm going to click on properties. And this will prove that these are not just regular Revit lines, they're actually populated with MWF information, and you would get this pop-up here. This is where you would select the bridging type. I'm going to select SB02 because this is the one I just created. If you wanted to add a whole series, you would select one from here, but I'm not going to do that for now. You can enable stiffeners. I'm not going to do that for now either. I'm just going to click on OK. You'll also notice that nothing happened yet. Why? Because we need to regenerate. Okay. And now we can see the tool that we've created. We can see the result. And let's talk a little bit about what happened here. So the first thing you'll notice is that it applied it to both sides, actually. There. So there's one here and there's one here. And this is not what we wanted. We want to apply it just on one side. So this is one change we have to make. The other thing you'll notice is that it placed these elements here at the end and at the start. So it's EJ2 and EJ1. And that's not what I wanted. So let's start with changing the marker line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this blue dot here, just going to drag it up to here. I will do the same thing for the other marker line, because as you may know, when you change the location of a marker line, the tool is going to follow accordingly. So I'm going to do that again here. Just going to move it here and here. And that's it for now. You'll notice that nothing happened. This is because I need to regenerate, but I'm not going to do that yet because I actually want to make some changes here. I'm going to jump back to our sample. I'm going to open a floor plan, and I've pre-created this section. I'm just going to borrow it a little bit. I want to show you what's happening here. I'm going to go to view. So this is what we have created so far, okay? There's a few things that we have to check so that we place this member in our squash block correctly. I will be using the annotate tool, just a regular Revit tool, and I'm going to measure this here. I'm just measuring the return, and I also want to measure this from here to here, okay? The reason is that I want to move this member all the way up here, but I don't want it to clash with the return. So that's one thing. The other thing is because I want to know the size that I need to use for the squash block member. It needs to fit in here. So I'm probably going to use like a 6-inch member. And another way that you can find out this information is to actually select the family. If you click on edit type, and if you go here, it says the number of the return. This is the size of the return. That's another way. And that's it for now. That's all I needed to know. Okay, so let's start to make these changes that we just talked about. To do this, we have to go back to the tool. Okay, and it's going to be here. We're going to go to project bridging types, and I'm going to SBO2. The first thing we have to change is to disable this, because we only want it to be on one side. The other thing that we have to do, well, I'm going to keep the family as is, but I do want to change the position because I want to offset it from the top. And remember the number of the return that we just saw, I need to place this here. So it was 5/8. The rotation is going to be 0. This is how I want to place it. I have to change the length. It's going to be 6 inches. And by the way, if I hadn't moved the marker lines, I can actually remove the end joist from here. So it wouldn't apply to the end joist, but this doesn't matter right now because I already moved the marker line. So that's it. I'm just going to click on OK. Again, we don't see the result because we have to regenerate. And that's it. This is the result I wanted. It's looking good. To check it, I can check that section again. And that's exactly how I wanted to place it. Okay, that's it for the first sample. I will remove the section box. And let's talk about creating the other sample right here. Again, this is going to be a little bit repetitive. I'm going to click on BX on my end. Again, I'm just going to check the scope box, make it a little higher so we can see better. And I'm going to repeat a few steps that we did before. Create. And I'm just going to use light gauge, frame it now, and create. Okay. Again, I'm going to be placing the marker lines just like we did before. It's going to be from here. Create marker lines. So same thing. I'm not going to apply anything. Just a reminder that you can. Remember, we just created SBO2. There it is. It's going to populate here. But again, I'm not going to apply it right now. I'm going to apply it in a little bit because I still didn't talk about the notching member tool yet. Just going to click on OK. There they are. So now I have to create the settings for the notch member. So we go back to Tools, Project Bridging Types. This time I'm gonna click on create new, and it's going to be notched member. I'm gonna call it NMO2, and I'm gonna click on OK. So it's not a lot of options here. It's not a big menu. All you have to do here is click to add top member, and click if you want to add a bottom member, because you can add it either to the top or to the bottom or both. I'm going to actually just add it to the bottom, so I'm going to untick. Here is where you select your family. I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to use this family. If you want to use a whole series, I have a pre-created one, but I'm going to pretend that I didn't because I want to show you how I created it, how I create it from scratch. So I'm going to select nothing. And here is if you want to add an offset. That's it. That's all. I'm just going to click on OK. Nothing's going to happen yet because I actually have to apply this. And I'm going to select them, go to properties. I selected the lines, and I'm going to apply the bridging type I just created. It's this one here, and MO2. I'm just going to click on OK. Let's see how this looks. Regenerate. Okay. Okay, so the first part for the notching member tool is done. This looks pretty good. I'm happy with this. However, we probably already know that in the BIM world, if I click on HI, this is considered a clash, right? This is incorrect. In reality, it's not gonna look like that. In reality, there needs to be a hole or a notch right here. And this brings us back to our section. We have to take some measurements for the next step. I will just reset. I'm gonna go back to our section. I'm gonna borrow it again. Just gonna bring it here and go to view, and here we are. Okay, so what we need to do is create a rectangular hole. We have to actually know the dimensions that we need. So I'm gonna just measure from here to all the way here, and I have to remember this number, okay? So I'm gonna need to write it down on my end, okay, because I'm gonna use it in a little bit. So that's one thing. The other thing I need to do, I already know this already, but we do have to know the size. Sorry, not here. So it's all the way from here, tab, all the way to here, tab. Okay, and we already know that this is 10 inches. So these are the two numbers we need to create the hole. Let's create the hole and apply it. And let's go back to our 3D. To create a hole in MWF, you probably know this already. If you don't, it's actually here in Tools. What you have to do is create a whole series. So these are the tools that are related to the whole series. One of them is to create one, and one of them is to regenerate them. I'm just going to click here on Project Whole Series, and I'm going to create one. So I'm going to pretend that I don't have one already, because I do want to show you something. When I click on Create New, you have the option to create different hole types. You can create a round, rectangular, rectangular void, round void, slot, or CNC code. So first thing you have to do is give it a name. So I'm going to call this REC02. I will be using this one for now. And I'm going to talk to you about this one in a little bit because I've pre-created some settings for this one, for rectangular void. I just want to show you the difference between these two. And I'm going to click on OK. There it is. And here I have to specify a few things. I'm not going to offset it from center now. I'll come back and do that in a little bit. But I do want to specify the width and the height. What we've seen in the section, the numbers we saw, we're going to actually apply them here. For the width, it was 10. For the height, it was 7 over 16 inches. Okay, that's it. Here you have the option to stretch for sloping penetrance. This is in the case where you have a slope in your panel and you want the hole to stretch. In this case, we don't have this option, So I'm not gonna actually use it. And I'm just gonna repeat the height. 1 second. 2, 7 over 16. Okay. And I'm just gonna click on OK. And I haven't applied it yet. So I'm gonna select these marker lines here, and I'm going to go back to properties. And I'm gonna apply the whole series here. I just created this. It's REC2. And I'm gonna click on OK. And let's regenerate. Okay, so we have the right size of the hole that was created. However, it wasn't placed in the right location. We have to go back to our section. So what we have to do right now is, I'm going to use annotate. We want to move this line here of the hole all the way to this line here of the member. So I'm just going to measure these like this. And I need to remember this number because this is the number I'm going to use to be able to offset this hole. Okay, let's go back. I'm going to go back to the 3D. To change this, I have to go back to the tool. So it's under tools, and here where it says project hole series, it was this one. Okay, so we have to enter a number right here. The number we just saw was 325 over 32. If I click on OK, and if I regenerate, okay, so I've placed it in the wrong location. The reason for this is I didn't place it in the negative. So let's go back one more time. Let's go back to project hole series. Again, we're here. Just remember that if you don't place a negative, it's gonna move it to the top. If you place a minus right here, and if I click on OK, and now if I go back and if I regenerate, now you'll notice that it placed it properly. There it is. Okay, we're almost done, guys. Not much left. Just one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. I'm going to remove the section box. Okay, let's talk about the difference between this, the linear cutter void, and what we used here. So if I select this, it's gonna say structural opening cut. And here, if I select it again, same thing, it's another structural opening cut. However, when I use the other option, remember I had mentioned that I used the rectangular void option for the previous sample. It's gonna look like this. I'm just gonna hover over it and click on tab. There it is. It's a linear cutter void. The difference is that this creates a Revit void, and it's gonna go all the way from the beginning of your panel all the way to the end of your panel. It's one object that goes through the whole panel. So this one is different in the sense that it's different openings, it's different cuts. So this really depends on you. It might matter in the case where you have a big project. It might be recommended to use this one in that case because, well, this is adding multiple openings while this is considered one. So it might make a difference with regards to the size of your project. That's it, guys. As I promised, it was really a quick webinar, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening.